Hello, everyone. It's Michael Shermer, and it's time for another episode of The Michael Shermer Show. This one is brought to you by Brilliant. You can access and read about Brilliant at brilliant.org. And if you go to brilliant.org/skeptic, you get a 30-day free trial, and the first 200 of you will get 20% off your annual subscription in addition to the 30-day free trial. Why would you want to do this? Because Brilliant is the online platform that presents short courses crafted by award-winning teachers, researchers, and professionals from MIT, Caltech, Duke, Microsoft, Google, and more. For example, you can just touch the app on your phone. It opens right up to a bunch of different courses that you can take. For example, there's courses on college science classes, including those on scientific thinking, classical mechanics, electricity and magnetism, quantum objects, quantum computing, chemical reaction, and computational biology. And that's just in one category. Under statistics and finance, you can take courses in probabilities and statistics, applied probability, random variables, and my favorite, casino probability. And if you or your children need refreshers for that upcoming SAT or any of the other prep courses that you have to take for like the GRE, you can do it right here on Brilliant. You can bone up on algebra fundamentals, algebra 1 and 2, geometry fundamentals, geometry 1 and 2, and probabilities and statistics, which I think is one of the most important things you could study. For example, under statistics, probability statistics, you just touch on that app. I got one here that pops up. Statistics fundamentals. Here's an introduction. You just touch on the app here. What do I want to look at? Okay. How about deception? That's a good one. Let's see what some of the problems are of how deception is employed using statistics. Statistics are a powerful tool because it uses data to convey important information. This information may be visualized as a graph, chart, or table. It might be given numerically as the mean, medium, or mode, or the percent change, right? Well, we all know how easy that is to distort by just using distorting numbers on the axes, okay? So let's just see some examples here, like, right? United States medium home price. So they show a graph like that. And how to interpret that, right? What can we conclude about home prices in the United States? The median home price tripled from March 2009 to January 2011, right? Or the median home price increased by $50,000, which looks to be the right one. Or the median home price increased at a constant rate. Okay, so let's just try number 2, all right? And submit that. And I got it correct. Yay. There's hope for me yet. And then you hit continue, and it gives you an explanation and then another one about probabilities and statistics regarding playing cards, right? So that's the kind of thing. It's interactive. We know from studies in cognitive psychology on learning that people learn much better in short chunks that they interact with. They have to give feedback. They have to be part of the process rather than just sitting at a desk in a classroom listening to some college professor like me ramble on at the chalkboard, right? So check it out, brilliant.org/skeptic to get your 30-day free trial, and the first 200 of you, 20% discount off of that first annual subscription. Why would you not want to do this? It's a fabulous way to learn. Online content, it is so exciting. Check it out, brilliant.org/skeptic. All right, thanks for listening. This time I'm going to deliver for you my final lecture. In fact, I called it the final lecture in my Skeptic Substack essay, subtitled 10 Lessons on Living a Good Life and Being Resilient in the Teeth of Entropy Problems, Setbacks, and Obstacles, aka Normal Life. Okay, what I mean by the final lecture? Well, for the past 12 years, I've been a presidential fellow at Chapman University. I signed up for a 5-year run as a presidential fellow, and that was 12 years ago. So it's been a good run. They decided they didn't want to renew my contract, and that was okay with me because I now live in Santa Barbara. Chapman is in Orange, down by Anaheim. It's 140 miles each way. That's basically a 2 Joe Rogan podcast drive for the day, if you want to put it in those terms, or half an audio book and so forth. It was time for a change, and in fact, I think what I'd like to start doing here is producing content for the Skeptic Society, which we're already doing, based on my course. That is Skepticism 101, How to Think Like a Scientist. I've been lecturing on causality and determining truth, Bayesian reasoning, signal detection theory, the scientific method, rationality and irrationality, game theory, cognitive biases, cults, conspiracies, Holocaust denial, creationism, science and religion, science and morality, science and politics, science and economics, and much, much more. So the plan, long-term plan here is to start producing some of these lectures as content for the podcast, individual units here. And but this particular one came about because in the final lecture of my course, which ended this week, is final this week, so last Monday night, I kind of gave a recap of the entire course, and at the end, there was only like 15 minutes left to go. One of the students says, "Do you have any tips for us or any lessons for life? Like, how can we live a better life?" These are 18, 19-year-old kids. And so I said, all right. So just off the top of my head, I rattled off a bunch of stuff I could think of. And then I formalized that in my Substack Skeptic essay here called The Final Lecture. So if you want to check that out, just see the link in the show notes. So here are the 10 lessons. Actually, there's a lot more. I have at least 18 that I produced, short versions for a LinkedIn course that I'm now going to expand into content for the podcast, as well as maybe a book. Maybe. We'll see. Okay, here we go. Lesson 1, the first law of life. The second law of thermodynamics is the first law of life, namely to expend energy to survive and flourish. I know that sounds rather anodyne, so let me unpack that briefly here. Then we'll see how it applies to all the other lessons. Basically, we are physical beings living in a physical universe governed by the laws of nature. And one of the most fundamental of all the laws of nature is called the second law of thermodynamics, entropy, which holds that in a closed system, energy dissipates, disorder increases, and things run down. The classic example people use is a cup of coffee, which will get cold if you don't do anything to heat it up. And the question is why? And the reason it's hot in the first place is because of all the atoms in there are jiggling, and that jiggling and bumping into each other causes heat. And it just dissipates because of the second law of thermodynamics. So your hand gets warmer as the cup gets cooler. The air above the cup of coffee gets warmer as the coffee gets cooler, and so on. That's basically just entropy. You could stick it in the microwave to reheat the coffee, which is your way of fighting back against entropy by putting energy into the cup. Of course, the energy to run the microwave has to come from somewhere. It's not the electricity fairy out of the wall. So you have to pay your electricity company, who has to pay the power plants that generate the electricity. And so there's no free lunch in the universe. Anyway, humans are open systems. We capture energy from food and convert it to power our muscles and move and push back against entropy, like making coffee or cleaning the house, going to work, and so forth. So this is what I mean when I say that the second law of thermodynamics is the first law of life. Your purpose in life is to expend energy to carve out little pockets of order amidst all the chaos that leads to survival and flourishing. Your survival and flourishing. Examples of entropy abound. Metal rusts if you don't maintain it. Weeds overrun gardens if you don't weed them. Wood rots if you don't paint it. Beds stay unmade, and bedrooms get cluttered if you don't make and clean them. Your body will grow weak and flabby if you don't stress it regularly with exercise. Your mind becomes fuzzy and confused if you don't challenge it to think. Friendships and relationships must be maintained through regular communication. An empty bank account is what happens if you don't go to work and earn money. And in that sense, poverty is what societies get if they do nothing productive. That is, poverty doesn't need an explanation. That's the default position. That's what you get if you do nothing. If you put energy into the system, you can produce wealth. Anyway, entropy is not a force per se like gravity. It's just what happens if energy isn't put into the system. So my example here is a sandcastle. There are a near infinite number of ways that grains of sand can be configured into an amorphous blob that resembles nothing in particular. But with just the right amount of water mixed in with the sand, there are a limited number of ways that the grains can be congealed into structures that resemble castles. But what happens if the sandcastle is not maintained? Wind and waves and dogs and children erode it back into a featureless blob. There are far more ways for sand to be unstructured than structured. So life consists of building sandcastles and maintaining them. By the way, this also explains why failures in life are so much more common than successes. There's simply more ways to fail than there are to succeed. And the higher you aim, the more obstacles there are going to be for you to get there. And entropy will push back against you along the way. So remember that the next time you fail. Like sandcastles, failure is normal. Success is unusual. Okay, lesson number 2, to thine own self be true. Of course, this comes from William Shakespeare's play Hamlet, in which the character Polonius says, "This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man." To thine own self be true. What does this mean exactly? Well, let's begin with what philosophers call the law of identity. A is A, which means that each thing is identical with itself. The 15th century philosopher Nicholas of Cusa explained it this way: there cannot be several things exactly the same, for in that case, there would not be several things, but the same thing itself. So being true to yourself means recognizing and acknowledging that A is A, that you are you and not someone else. To try to be something that you are not, or to pretend to be someone else, is a violation of the law of identity. A cannot be non-A. A is A means discovering who you are, your temperament and your personality, your intelligence and your abilities, your needs and your wants, your loves and your interests, what you believe and stand for, where you want to go and how you want to get there, and what matters most to you. Thine own self is your A, which cannot also be non-A. The attempt to make A into non-A has caused countless problems, failures, and heartaches in people's lives. How do you figure out who you are? By testing yourself, by trying new things, by meeting new people, by exploring, traveling, and reading, by trying different jobs and considering different careers. In time, you will discover that most things you try, you will not be good at. But out of all those failures will emerge a handful of things that you are good at, a few people whom you are drawn to, and slowly the real you will emerge. Thine own true self will come into focus. Lesson 3, be anti-fragile. If the purpose of life is to survive and flourish in the teeth of entropy, pushing back against everything you do, then you need to be anti-fragile, a word coined by the risk analyst Nassim Nicholas Taleb in his 2012 book of that title, Antifragile. The subtitle is Things That Gain from Disorder. It's on how to live in a world that is unpredictable and chaotic, and how to thrive during times of stress and even disaster, which are not that uncommon. Antifragile means growing and prospering from randomness, uncertainty, opacity, and disorder, and benefiting from a variety of shocks. Here's how my friend, the psychologist Jonathan Haidt, applies the concept of antifragility to raising children. Quote, bone is anti-fragile. If you treat it gently, it will get brittle and break. Bone actually needs to be banged around to toughen up, and so do children. They need to have a lot of unsupervised time to get in over their heads and get themselves out. Yeah, just think about the astronauts in the space station who are up there for 6 months, a year, and if they don't do the exercise, their bodies just get super weak and flabby, their bones brittle. They can't even stand when they get back on Earth, except for the ones that actually do the physical exercise, which means stressing out their bones and muscles. Peanut allergies is another example. They used to be extremely rare. A mid-1990s study, for example, found that only 4 out of 1,000 children under the age of 8 had a peanut allergy. A 2008 study by the same researchers, however, found that the rate had skyrocketed by 350% to 14 per 1,000. Why? Because parents and teachers had protected children from exposure to peanuts. So the lesson is clear. Immune systems become anti-fragile by exposure to environmental stressors, and so too do our minds and bodies to the stressors of daily life. In the digital version here at Skeptic column, I provide an an article from the journal, New England Journal of Medicine, about this that shows why that's important to do. So one solution to this problem may be found in an old saying, prepare the child for the road, not the road for the child. Other idioms capture the principle behind the lesson of antifragility. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, Nietzsche famously said. Or, tough times don't last, but tough people do, which was what my mother used to tell me. I have no idea where the origin of that quote is. I've seen it attributed to many people. Here's what I wrote to one of my students when she was going through a particularly difficult time. This was a few years ago. No matter who you reach out to, ultimately it will come down to you and how you respond to your issues. There's only so much other people can do. In the end, you have to help yourself. Whatever has happened in your life, you can't do anything about that now, as it's in the past and it's out of your control. What is in your control is how you respond to it, whatever the it is, starting by deciding today that you are not going to let yourself be a victim any longer. It has to stop. And ultimately, only you can make it stop. Psychologists, family, and friends can only do so much. You must dig deep inside yourself and call up reserves you didn't know you had. And from there, rebuild your life day by day, hour by hour, until it no longer is holding you back from realizing your full potential. What does not kill you makes you stronger. Whatever happened, it didn't kill you. You are alive. You are engaged in the world. You're working on assignments. You'll go stronger with every accomplishment. So the current craze of overprotecting students from anything that makes them uncomfortable, including ideas that may challenge them, is making them weaker, not stronger, fragile, not anti-fragile. Lesson 4, be self-disciplined because action is character. As the name implies, discipline comes from within the self. You are the architect of your life. You are responsible for what you do. So do it. How? Change your behavior and your cognition will follow. Change your habits and your thoughts will follow. Everyone is looking for a hack, an easy way around the self-discipline problem. There is no hack and no way around being self-disciplined. External motivations, like motivating yourself with rewards for changing your habits, will not last. The motivation must eventually come from within. Internal motivation is the key to self-discipline. You want to stop eating sugar and unhealthy food? Stop eating sugar and unhealthy food. Where? Here. When? Now. Self-discipline happens here and now. Stop eating bad food and start eating good food here and now. Just do it. Toward the end of his life, the novelist F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote that action is character, by which he meant that what you do is who you are. Cognitive psychologists call this embodied cognition, in which action becomes character. My friend, the science writer Amy Alcon, wrote a book about this, colorfully titled Unfuckology, a field guide to living with guts and confidence, with a chapter title that perfectly captures the principle, the mind is bigger than the brain. Here is how Amy explains the principle in her humorous way. Quote, embodied cognition research shows that who you are is not just a product of your brain. It's also in your breathing, your gut, the way you stand, the way you speak. And while you're speaking, whether you make eye contact or dart your eyes like you're about to bolt under a car like a cat. By acting and behaving a new way, you push out of your mind the old ways of being that you want to change. You are what you do, so act the way you want to feel. Be the person you want to be by acting like that person. As the Buddha counseled, your worst enemy cannot harm you as much as your own thoughts unguarded. But once mastered, no one can help you as much. Lesson 5, don't be a victim. In their 2018 book, The Rise of Victimhood Culture, Microaggressions, Safe Spaces, and the New Culture Wars, the sociologists Bradley Campbell and Jason Manning document how Western society has transitioned from an honor culture to a dignity culture and is now shifting into a victimhood culture. In a culture of honor, each person has to earn honor, and unable to tolerate a slight, takes action himself. The big advance in Western society was to let the law handle serious offenses and ignore the inevitable minor ones, what sociologists call the culture of dignity, which reigned in the 20th century. It allows diversity to flourish because different people can live near each other without killing each other. As such, a culture of honor leads to autonomy, independence, self-reliance, confidence, courage, and strength of character. The past quarter century, however, has seen the rise of a victimhood culture, where people are hypersensitive to slights, as in the honor culture, but they don't take care of it themselves. Instead, they appeal to a third party to punish for them. A culture of victimhood leads people to divide the world into good and bad classes, namely victims and oppressors. As such, a culture of victimhood makes you weak, dependent, timid, afraid, and lacking courage and character. Yes, any of us can be victims, but how you handle it is what matters. In a victimhood culture, the primary way to gain status is to either be a victim or to condemn alleged perpetrators against victims, leading to an accelerating search for both. An Oxford student explained what happened to her after she joined a campus feminist group named Country Living, spelled like it sounds, and started reading their literature on misogyny and patriarchy. Here is her description of what she became after joining this group. Along with all of this, my view of women changed. I stopped thinking about empowerment and started to see women as vulnerable, mistreated victims. I came to see women as physically fragile, delicate, butterfly-like creatures struggling in the cruel net of patriarchy. I began to see male entitlement everywhere. Feminism had not empowered me to take on the world. It had not made me stronger, fiercer, tougher. Even leaving the house became a minefield. What if a man whistled at me? What if someone looked me up and down? How was I supposed to deal with that? This fear-mongering had turned me into a timid, stay-at-home, emotionally fragile bore. Here's an anti-fragile way to deal with misogyny and patriarchy from the model and pro-nuclear energy activist Isabel Boemke. And I have a screenshot of her tweet here from several years ago in the print digital version of this essay. Here's what I do when catcalled. Roll my eyes. If he's Hispanic, say, chinga tu madre. Put earphones on and continue with life. If your Spanish is a little rusty, a biblical monotony will maybe help you find meaning in the command to go forth and multiply with your mother. Hopefully you got that. So stop with the safe spaces, trigger warnings, microaggressions, and especially the deplatforming and cancellation of speakers who may cause students to rethink their beliefs. You know what colleges and universities were designed to do. It's turning young adults into fragile snowflakes instead of anti-fragile warriors. Lesson 6, don't eat the marshmallow. When video of Admiral William H. McRaven's 2014 commencement address at the University of Texas at Austin was posted online, the speech went viral. Millions of viewers will remember the core message summed up in his memorable line, "If you want to change the world, start off by making your bed." The Navy SEAL veteran explained the psychology behind such a simple task. This, by the way, is called small wins by psychologists. Here is Admiral William McRaven. If you make your bed every morning, you'll have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride and will encourage you to do another task and another and another. By the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you'll never do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you will come home to a bed that is made, that you made. And a made bed gives you encouragement that tomorrow will be better. Admiral McRaven's life lessons in his speech are, in fact, variations on a theme explored by the legendary psychologist Walter Mischel in his 2014 book, The Marshmallow Test. The key to being a successful Navy SEAL, or anything else in life, is summed up in the book's subtitle, Mastering Self-Control. Mischel begins by describing how, in the late 1960s, he and his colleagues devised a straightforward experiment to measure self-control at the Bing Nursery School at Stanford University. In its simplest form, children between the ages of 4 and 6 were given a choice between 1 marshmallow now or 2 marshmallows if they waited 15 minutes. Some kids ate the marshmallows right away, but most engaged in unintentionally hilarious attempts to overcome the temptation. Just Google marshmallow test and click on video, and you'll see these hilarious videos. They averted their gaze, covered their eyes, squirmed in their seats, or sang to themselves. They made grimacing faces, tugged at their ponytails, picked up the marshmallow, and pretended to take a bite. They sniffed it, pushed it away from them, covered it up. If paired with a partner, they engaged in dialogue about how they could work together to reach the goal of doubling their pleasure. In 2006, Professor Mischel published a new paper in the prestigious journal Psychological Science. The researchers did a follow-up study with the students they had tested 40 years before, examining the type of adults they had grown into. They found that the children who were able to delay gratification had higher SAT scores entering college, higher GPA averages at the end of college, and they made more money after college. Perhaps not surprisingly, they also tended to have a lower body mass index, BMI number. That is, they were less likely to have a weight problem. So not eating the marshmallow is good for both your body and your mind. And life is a series of marshmallow tests. Which brings me to lesson 7, directing your future self. In an episode of the hit animated television series The Simpsons, Marge warns her husband that he might regret drinking the drinking binge he's about to go on, to which Homer replies, "That's a problem for future Homer. Man, I don't envy that guy." All of us, in fact, have future selves. Or more accurately, there is no fixed self, but rather an ever-changing self. And the fact that we can project ourselves into the future means we can not only anticipate how our future selves might act, we can take measures today to alter how our future selves behave. In the field of behavioral economics, this problem of the future self is called future discounting, or myopic, nearsighted discounting. And research shows that most of us discount the future too steeply. For example, electing to spend too much now instead of saving some for later. People are notoriously bad at long-term investing, as well as selecting smart retirement plans. The reason is that the world we evolved in, and in all of human history until recently, life was, in the words of the political theorist Thomas Hobbes, nasty, brutish, and short. Why save for a fabulous 75th birthday party when the odds were pretty high that you'd be dead by 50? For most of our ancestors, a bird in the hand was worth 2 in the bush. In that world, it was better to eat 1 marshmallow now than risk the promised 2 marshmallows later that might be purloined or otherwise lost. A bumper sticker captures the temptation psychology. Life is short. Eat dessert first. In today's world, however, there's a good chance you'll live a long life, so there is some justification to figuring out how to delay gratification, save for the future, plan for retirement, and expect your future self to be around for a while. The key here is projecting your current self into the future, asking yourself now what you want to happen then, and set up conditions today that you know will take effect later when your future self may not be trusted with doing the right thing. This, by the way, is a solution to the free will determinism problem. You have volition. You have some self-control. You have some free will, some will. This is how you do it. You just project yourself into the future and then alter the conditions as you go. Who's making those changes? You are, right? You are not predetermined to be a certain way. That is, you don't want to be Homer and say of your future self, man, I don't envy that guy. Lesson 8. Be your own financial advisor. The comedian Woody Allen once joked, "It is better to be rich than to be poor, if only for financial reasons." Well, yes, it is. And those financial reasons are not trivial. Money may not be able to buy you love, happiness, or meaningfulness, but it sure can make life more comfortable. And more importantly, it can increase your opportunities to find love, happiness, and meaningfulness. How? First, if you're living on the margins, that is, your income barely covers your expenses and you have next to nothing left over for additional consumption or investment, your opportunities for doing anything else, from vacations to hobbies to retirement, are reduced to next to nothing. Second, money buys you time, and with that time can be put to use to make more money, as well as enjoying life by enriching it with additional opportunities for both business and pleasure. 3, money buys a better life, better food, better clothes, better homes, better education, better transportation, better travel, better recreation, and better retirement. How do you make money? Investments in real estate or the stock market, or both. I recommend a book called The Gone Fishin' Portfolio by a financial advisor named Alex Green, who subsequently became a friend of mine. What Alex demonstrates is that no one can consistently beat the market. You may hear about people who do, for example, the fund managers like Bill Miller, who in 2006 was declared by CNN Money to be the greatest money manager of our time because he beat the S&P 500 stock index 15 years in a row. Impressive, huh? But as my science writer friend Leonard Mlodinow calculated in his book, The Drunkard's Walk, How Randomness Rules Our Lives, this is one of the books I assigned to my class, by the way, there are over 6,000 fund managers in the U.S., so if you do a simple coin flip calculation of the odds that someone in that cohort of 6,000 fund managers would beat the S&P 500 15 years in a row, turns out to be 0.75. That is 3 out of 4. As Len says, the CNN Money headline should have read, "Expected 15-year run finally occurs. Bill Miller, lucky beneficiary." And when you know it, in the 2 years after Miller's 15-year streak, the story read, "The market handily pulverized him." When Alex Green says to go fishing, what he means is that you should not try to be the next Bill Miller. Why? Because only after the fact can we pick out the winners. Instead, you should pick stocks in companies with a solid track record, or even better, invest in mutual funds tied to, for example, the S&P 500. And then, well, go fishing. In my case, go cycling. That is, leave your investments alone. For example, Green calculates that if you invested $10,000 in 1990 in a mutual fund tied to the entire S&P 500, and then you went fishing, 20 years later, you'd have $90,000. 10,000 to 90,000 in a decade, not counting dividend reinvestment, which would net you over $100,000, a tenfold increase. It's incredible. By contrast, if you tried to be actively involved in trading, buying and selling stocks, and trying to anticipate what the market would do, you risk missing the biggest increases in that 20-year block. For example, if you missed just the 5 best days in that 20 years, your $90,000 account would plummet to $45,000. If you missed the 10 best days, you'd end up with around $35,000. If you missed the best 25 days, your $10,000 investment would only bring you $19,000. And if you missed the best 50 days, you'd actually lose money. Anyone can compute for you how much stocks have returned to investors in the past. No one can do that for the future. In the case of the S&P 500, since the 1920s, it has returned an annualized average of around 10%. The returns for the NASDAQ, which is heavily loaded in tech stocks that have done so well over the past 20 years, except for the last year and a half or so, is significantly higher. Whichever fund you invest in, however, you should expect that your future returns will not be significantly higher or lower than the long-term average, which in any block of time is a 2-digit positive number. Here's how Alex Green explains it. History clearly demonstrates that no other asset class returns more than stocks over the long haul. Once you understand this and accept the steep odds against timing the market, you've made the first step toward adopting an investment strategy that can generate high returns with an acceptable level of risk. In other words, make the money work for you. Real estate can also do that. I don't have much real estate, no real estate investments other than my home I live in. But I know plenty of people that do, and they've done very well. So those are the two things. Okay, last two lessons. Number 9, build strong social networks. Diet and exercise are very important tools for living a long, healthy, and high-quality life. But believe it or not, there's something else you can do that produces even better results, and it doesn't require getting up at 0 dark 30, doing push-ups, or eating kale. All you have to do is be sociable. Here are some comparisons of things you can do to lower your mortality risk based on the latest studies in longevity by scientists around the world. Exercise lowers mortality risk by 33%. A happy marriage lowers it by 49%. Eating 6 or more servings per day of fruits and vegetables lowers mortality risk by 26%. Having a large social network lowers it by 45%. Eating 3 servings a day of whole grains lowers mortality risk by 23%. Feeling you have others you can count on for support lowers it by 35%. Eating a Mediterranean diet lowers mortality risk by 21%. Living with someone lowers it by 32%. These numbers and their implications for what you can do to improve your life were compiled by the science journalist Marta Zaraska and published in her book Growing Young: How Friendship, Optimism, and Kindness Can Help You Live to 100. Okay, I'm going for it. Here are some of her suggestions of simple things you can do, all backed by scientific research. Engage in more physical contact with others. Kiss your partner more often. Hold hands with your kids. Hug your friends. Rub each other's back. Look others in the eyes. Prioritize your romantic relationship and really commit to it. Read books and articles on how to be a better partner. Avoid contempt, criticism, stonewalling, and defensiveness. Talk with your partner about good things that happen in your daily life. Try new and fun things together and have some fun. Invest in your friendships. Spend more time together. Disclose your secrets and don't be afraid to ask for favors. When you're with your partner or friends and family, put your phone away and focus on them. Be more extroverted by greeting staff in a store, calling a friend whom you haven't talked to in a while. Try a new restaurant or bar or cafe where you'll meet new people working there. In Zaraska's words, here's the bottom line, quote, "It's time we recognize that improving our social lives and cultivating our minds can be at least as important for health and longevity as our diet and exercise. When you grow as a person, chances are you'll also grow young. To Michael Pollan's famous statement, eat food, not too much, mostly plants, I would add, be social, care for others, enjoy life." Okay, last lesson for now. Finding your meaning and purpose in life. What specifically should you do to find meaning and purpose in life? Philosophers, theologians, and sages from spiritual traditions have been writing about this topic for millennia. And recently, psychologists have undertaken scientific studies of people and what they do to find meaning and purpose in life. Here are some of the findings. 1. Love and family. The bonding and attachment to other people increases one's circle of sentiments and corresponding sense of purpose to care about others as much as, if not more than, oneself. A core principle of leading a meaningful life is to make it more than just about yourself. 2. Meaningful work and career. Having a passion for work and a long-term career gives most people a drive to achieve goals beyond the needs of themselves and their immediate family that lifts all of us to a higher plane and society toward greater prosperity and moral progress. Having a reason to get up and around in the morning and having a place to go where one is needed is a lasting, purposeful goal. 3. Social and community involvement. We are not isolated individuals, but social beings with the drive to participate in the process of determining how best we should live together for the benefit of ourselves, our families, our communities, and our societies. This is not just voting but, for example, being actively engaged in the political process. It's not just a matter of joining a club or society, but caring about its goals and the actions of the other members working toward the same goals. So get out and participate. 4, challenges and goals. Most of us need tests and trials and things at which to aim, both ordinary, such as physical challenges of sports and recreation, and the mental challenge of games and intellectual pursuits, as well as extraordinary, such as striving for abstract principles like truth, justice, and freedom, and struggling through obstacles in the way of realizing them. That takes us back to the first law, push back against entropy. And number 5, transcendency and spirituality. Possibly unique to our species is the capacity for aesthetic appreciation, spiritual reflection, and transcendent contemplation through a variety of expressions, such as art, music, dance, exercise, sports, meditation, prayer, quiet contemplation, religious reverie, and spiritual contemplation, connecting us to that which is outside of ourselves and generating a sense of awe and wonder at the vastness of humanity, nature, the world, and the cosmos. The idea that we live in a universe that is 13.8 billion years old, on a planet that is but one among trillions of planets in our galaxy alone, itself one of hundreds of billions of other galaxies, in a universe that is possibly just one in a multiverse of universes, is so staggering a thought as to leave one speechless in reverence for the vastness of it all. So I'll end this reverie on Lessons for Life with an inspiring poem that completely changed how I looked at my life when I first encountered it. You'll be familiar with it. It's called Invictus, written in 1920 by William Ernst Henley, and is particularly poignant since he wrote it when he was terminally ill. Here it is. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloodied, but unbowed. Beyond this plate of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how strait the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. All right. Thanks for listening. This is Michael Shermer. This is an episode of The Michael Shermer Show. Thank you for your support. See you next time.